San Jose State offensive lineman David Quest.
We used to be so strong, and now your words are covered in lies.
What's going on, everybody? My name is Justin Godsey for Justin Godsey TV. Thank you so much for checking out tonight's video. We're here recapping UFC Fight Night McGregor versus Brandao, or UFC Fight Night 46. Now, we're going to be looking at the top 3 matches on the UFC on the main card, and we're here looking at the flyweight matchup between Ian McCall and Brad Pickett. Now, in Ian McCall's last 2 fights, he's coming off, a victory against Santos. Eilidor Santos at UFC 163. Like I said, I am not great with names, so if you guys can please correct me down below in the description box, that would help me out a whole lot. He's coming off a victory against Santos, but at UFC 156, the last fight he was, that his last loss was against Joseph Benavidez. So he's 1-1 in his past 2 fights. At UFC 156, he lost to Joseph Benavidez. So he's trying to, get a winning streak here. He defeated Santos at 163. So, that's a good starting point for Ian McCall. But not only, he's trying to come in here and get a victory, he's also dedicating this fight to, one of his great friends. Shane Del Rosario is one of my favorite fighters to watch. He actually followed me on Twitter. I am a big fan of Shane Del Rosario. I was going to get an interview with him. I've dedicated a lot of my stuff to Shane Del Rosario, my MMA content on my former website, the MMA Roundtable. We had my own section for Shane Del Rosario, and I was very crushed when he passed away. And Ian McCall, being a good friend of his, everybody was pulling, for Ian McCall. A lot of the hometown fans, or for Brad Pickett was cheering for him. So it's the fans were really behind both of these fighters. You got London versus the United States in this fight, so it's a very very interesting fight. The crowd was great in this entire show, but a lot of respect was thrown out there to, both fighters, so they left it all in the octagon tonight. Now, like I said, Ian McCall is trying to pick up a victory here against Brad Pickett, but let's go and talk about Brad Pickett real quick before we get into full discussion about the fight. Now, when it comes to Brad Pickett, he's on that road now where it's like win-loss, win-loss, win-loss like that. That all started back at UFC 155, where he lost to Eddie Wineland in a very close competition. He lost to Eddie Wineland, but was able to rebound, defeating Mike Easton, lost again to Michael McDonald, and Neil Siri, who is also on this fight card. He defeated him in his most recent fight back in March. And then tonight, when it's all said and done, Ian McCall did defeat Brad Pickett via unanimous decision. It was very controlled. This entire fight was controlled by Ian McCall, and he is very, he was kind of like a flyweight version of Clay Guida. Clay Guida is a guy who likes to run around the octagon. Ian McCall was trying to take that kind of mentality and coming in here and, try to wear, Brad Pickett out. I know the flyweights are always those fast, fast punches, fast kind of guys, including the bantamweights division. You can also look at it like that. These guys like to run around, try to, tire down their opponents, but it's very hard and tough because, you both have guys who are, much smaller in weight at like 135, they're going to have more strength, they're going to have more speed and everything like that. So, Ian McCall was trying to use that to his advantage. He got what he was landing the shots that he needed. Brad Pickett at the end of the first round seemed to be tiring down a little bit. I saw that. But, from the second to third round, it was all Ian McCall, taking the takedowns. His groundwork was so great. It was just spot on tonight. Ian McCall defeats Brad Pickett via unanimous decision. But now what's next for Ian McCall? What's next for Brad Pickett? Now, for Brad Pickett, it's a very interesting, discussion here. You can possibly look at, Daryl Montague could be a possibility for Brad Pickett. I think Brad Pickett, he's back to that win-loss scenario, like I said, and he really needs to develop himself, get another fight, start working towards something here. If he's, in his mid-30s right now, he's 35 years old. He's 35 years old right now, so if he still wants to, work for a championship, you've got to get some sort of a winning streak going. I think a fight against Daryl Montague or possibly even Scott Jorgensen. Scott Jorgensen coming off a victory in his last fight. Brad Pickett really needs a nice profile victory. Scott Jorgensen, yes, he has not had the most greatest of success yet, but that's still a big name in this UFC flyweight division. So I would look forward to seeing possibly Brad Pickett versus Scott Jorgensen. And then for Ian McCall, this is where it gets very, very fun and interesting. Now, Chris Carriasso is going to be the number one contender right now for the UFC flyweight champion in Demetrius Johnson. So their fight's going to happen at some point. But how long? When is that fight actually going to be scheduled? Is it going to be? That's waiting, and that we're still waiting for that to be confirmed and everything like that. So Chris Carriasso, Demetrius Johnson. But what does this mean for Ian McCall and John Dodson? Now, a lot of people going into this fight, I said it myself, this is going to be a #1 contendership after Demetrius Johnson and Chris Carriasso. But the only question is, the UFC is already stacked for October. It's already stacked for, December. They already starting to schedule events for December. So it's very, hard to pinpoint on when Ian McCall or John Dodson will get a title shot, because, a big victory here against Brad Pickett is huge for the career of Ian McCall in the UFC. He really needed that high-profile victory, and he got that against Brad Pickett. Now, John Dodson, who just recently fought for the Flyweight Championship back in January, well, not recently, when it comes to its recent fights, 2 fights ago, he was facing off against Demetrius Johnson back in January of 2013. He faced off against Demetrius Johnson, so he's already had a championship shot. But, John Dodson has been on a roll right now. He defeated Daryl Montague at UFC 166, and then most recently defeated a former contender for the Flyweight Championship in John Moraga at UFC Fight Night Henderson versus Khabibulov back in June. So, when it's all said and done, I expect both McCall and Dodson to be back in the octagon, hopefully around that Phoenix card, maybe in October. I would love to see both of these fighters go out there and just, put it all on the line for the true number 1 contendership for the Flyweight Championship, and the winner could possibly end up facing, Demetrius Johnson, maybe, the kickoff 2015. They have to take time out. They got to rest. They got to get back into the octagon. I mean, I'll be really surprised if they would just all of a sudden, want to put Ian McCall and John Dodson on a September card, or possibly even the beginning of October. Those could be possibilities, but you know what? I think when it's all said and done, I would love to see Ian McCall versus John Dodson. Brad Pickett should face off against Daryl Montague or Tim Elliott, or possibly even, Scott Jorgensen. Get a victory for Brad Pickett, one way or another. Get something going for Brad Pickett. He's a great talent. Yes, he's in his mid-30s, but this is a great talent in the flyweight champion, in the flyweight division, I should say. So why not give him that opportunity and get him back in the octagon as soon as possible? So let me hear your guys' opinion about this, as I'll be back with you guys covering UFC Fight Night 46. We're going to look at Gunnar Nelson versus Zach Cummings. I'm Justin Godsey for the Justin Godsey TV. I'll catch you guys in my next video.